The Kiss Cam found us in section 214, row J, seats 15 and 16 of Miller Park on a humid Saturday night in July. I should have known something was wrong when my wife Tessa grabbed Rick Carroway's face instead of mine. The crowd erupted in confused laughter as Tessa planted a theatrical kiss on my boss's lips, then pointed at me with a wicked grin. "Just kidding!" she shouted into the stadium microphone the cameraman thrust at her. "That's my husband over there!" 43,000 people booed me. Actually booed. Like I was the villain in this twisted romantic comedy nobody asked for. I'm Greg Jennings, by the way. 38 years old, IT technician for Midwest Marketing Solutions, and apparently the biggest chump in Milwaukee, at least according to the Jumbotron. "It was just a joke, Greg," Tessa said as we walked to the parking lot, her arm linked through Rick's like they were old drinking buddies. "You're being way too sensitive." Rick Carroway, or Slick Rick, as everyone at the office called him, flashed his used car salesman's smile. "Come on, GJ, it was hilarious. You should have seen your face." I had seen my face. The Kiss Cam operator had helpfully zoomed in on my expression of pure bewilderment before cutting back to Tessa and Rick's encore performance. They'd actually kissed again, longer this time, while I sat there like a statue. "Hilarious," I repeated, my voice as lifeless as a carcass on the road. That's exactly the word I was thinking. The thing about Humiliation is that it has a very specific taste. Metallic, like iron, but with an aftertaste of cheap beer and stadium nachos. It sits in your throat and refuses to go down, no matter how much you swallow. I drove home alone. Tessa caught a ride with Rick and his wife Cheryl, though Cheryl had looked about as thrilled as I felt. Smart woman, that Cheryl. My apartment, our apartment, felt different when I walked in. Smaller somehow, like the walls had moved closer together while I was gone. I sat on the couch and stared at the blank TV screen, seeing my reflection stare back. "If this is love," I said to my reflection, "I'll stick to taxidermy." The apartment stayed quiet, which was probably for the best. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I opened my laptop and did what any self-respecting IT guy does when life gets complicated. I started digging through data, our phone records, credit card statements, Tessa's social media activity. Just routine maintenance, you understand. Making sure all our digital assets were properly organized. That's when I found the hotel charges. 3 different hotels over the past 2 months, all on days when Tessa claimed she was working late or having girls' night with her friend Mel. Mel, who, according to her own Instagram posts, had been in Chicago for her sister's wedding on one of those nights. I cross-referenced the hotel charges with Rick's expense reports. Amazing what you can access when you maintain the company's IT systems. Rick had been staying at the exact same hotels, same nights, sometimes even the same floor. Funny coincidence, I muttered, screenshotting everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. "Staying at Mel's tonight. You were acting weird at the game." I was acting weird. Right. Because normal husbands love watching their wives make out with other men on live television. I texted back, "No problem. Sleep well." Then I got back to work. By 3 a.m, I had a folder labeled Professional Development, containing 47 pieces of evidence that Tessa and Rick were having an affair. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, text message logs, even a few photos from Rick's company credit card statements showing purchases at Victoria's Secret. Victoria's Secret. The man was buying lingerie on the company dime. "Amateur," I said, closing the laptop. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, one thought kept circling through my mind like a shark. You don't get to humiliate me on the Jumbotron and walk away smiling. No scene. That's for amateurs. I had something much better in mind. Monday morning brought fresh coffee and stale office air, along with the usual parade of co-workers pretending they hadn't seen the kiss cam footage that was now circulating on social media with the hashtag #KissCamFail. "Hey GJ," called out Gina, Rick's 27-year-old assistant, as I passed her desk. "Crazy game Saturday, huh?" Gina was the kind of person who collected gossip like other people collected stamps, carefully, obsessively, and with an eye toward future trading opportunities. "Crazy's one word for it," I replied, stopping at her cubicle. "You see much of Rick this morning?" "Oh, he's been in meetings all day. Very important sales stuff." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "Between you and me, I think he's stressed about something. He's been making a lot of personal calls." "Personal calls during work hours? That doesn't sound like our Rick." Gina giggled. "Right. And get this, he asked me to book him a conference room for lunch meetings, but when I tried to add them to his calendar, he said they were off the books." "Who has off-the-books lunch meetings?" "Someone with something to hide," I suggested. "Exactly. Oh, and speaking of hiding things, did you know your wife has been coming by the office? Like a lot. Even on days when HR doesn't have meetings with sales." This was news to me. "Really?" "Yeah, she always says she's here to see Janet in HR, but I've seen her coming out of Rick's office. Not that it's any of my business," Gina added quickly, though her tone suggested it was absolutely her business, and she was thrilled to share it. I thanked Gina and headed to my desk, filing away this new information. Tessa had been visiting Rick at the office. Tessa, who worked for a completely different company across town and had no reason to be in our building except to see me. Except she never came to see me. At lunch, I drove to Tessa's gym, Elite Fitness on Harbor Drive. I'd never been inside, but I knew she went there every Tuesday and Thursday for personal training sessions. I parked across the street and waited. At 12:47, Rick's silver BMW pulled into the parking lot. At 12:52, Tessa's red Honda followed. They walked into the gym together, not touching but staying close, like magnets trying to pretend they weren't attracted to each other. I waited 45 minutes, then followed them inside. The gym was busy enough that I could blend in, pretending to check out membership options while keeping an eye on the free weights area. That's where I found them. Rick was spotting Tessa on the bench press, standing over her in a way that was definitely not regulation trainer positioning. Their conversation was too quiet to hear from across the room, but their body language was loud and clear. "You're looking good," I heard Rick say as I moved closer, pretending to examine a rowing machine. "I've been working out more," Tessa replied, sitting up on the bench. "Greg's been so distracted with work lately. I have lots of free time." "His loss," Rick said, his hand briefly touching her shoulder. "Some guys don't appreciate what they have." "Some guys don't know how to treat a woman," Tessa agreed. I felt that metallic taste again, stronger this time. I pulled out my phone and started recording audio, pretending to take a call. The gym's ambient noise would make the conversation hard to hear, but it was clear enough to establish they were together, alone during work hours. "We should be more careful," Tessa said, glancing around the gym. "Relax," Rick replied. "Who's going to see us here? Besides, we're just working out." "Just working out," Tessa repeated, but she was smiling when she said it. They finished their workout 20 minutes later, leaving separately but both heading in the direction of the Marriott downtown. I didn't follow them. I didn't need to. I already knew where they were going. That evening, Tessa came home with wet hair and a story about how her trainer had pushed her extra hard today. "You smell like hotel soap," I observed. "What?" "No, that's just the gym's body wash. They upgraded to some fancy organic stuff." Organic. Right. She studied my face for a moment, and I wondered if she could see what I was thinking. But then she shrugged and headed for the shower, her second of the day, apparently. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop, adding the gym surveillance to my growing file. 47 pieces of evidence had become 53. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email. A friend." The email contained a single attachment, a photo of Rick's loyalty card statement from the Marriott, showing a room booked for next Friday under the name R&T Anniversary. R&T, Rick and Tessa, Anniversary. Anniversary of what? The world's biggest slap in the face? I stared at the photo for a long time, then forwarded it to my professional development folder. 54 pieces of evidence. But who was my mysterious friend? Someone else who'd figured out what Rick and Tessa were up to. Someone with access to Rick's personal information. Someone who wanted me to know the truth. I looked at the timestamp on the email, sent from a company address, during business hours. Gina. It had to be Gina. I smiled for the first time in days. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who thought Rick and Tessa's performance needed a bigger audience. Friday was going to be very interesting. The Marriott downtown was the kind of place that catered to business travelers and people having affairs, often the same demographic. I booked a room on the 7th floor for Friday afternoon, 2 doors down from the room reserved for R&T Anniversary. The concierge, Mr. Lee, was exactly the type of person you'd want working the front desk if you were planning something that required witnesses. Chatty, observant, and blessed with the kind of memory that could recall what someone was wearing 3 weeks after they'd checked out. "First time staying with us?" he asked as I signed the registration. "Business trip," I lied smoothly. "I work in IT, so I travel a lot for system installations." "Ah, computers. Very important these days. You know, we just upgraded our security system. Digital cameras in all the hallways now, very high definition." "That's smart," I agreed. "You can never be too careful." Mr. Lee nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly, and the cameras are motion-activated, so they capture everything. We keep the footage for 30 days, just in case there are any incidents." "Incidents?" "Oh, you know, sometimes guests complain about noise, or they claim someone was bothering them. Having the footage helps us sort out what really happened." I thanked Mr. Lee for the information and headed upstairs, making sure to be very visible in the hallway. I wanted my presence documented, time-stamped, and filed away in the hotel's digital memory bank. At 2:15 p.m. I heard voices in the hallway. I cracked open my door and saw Rick and Tessa walking toward their room, holding hands like teenagers sneaking out past curfew. "I can't believe we're doing this," Tessa was saying. "Relax," Rick replied, fumbling with the key card. "It's not like anyone's going to find out." "But what if Greg gets suspicious?" "Greg doesn't suspect anything. Trust me, the guy's completely clueless." I had my phone out, recording through the crack in the door. The hallway acoustics were perfect. Every word came through crystal clear. "I just feel bad sometimes," Tessa continued. "He's not a bad guy." "He's a boring guy," Rick corrected. "There's a difference. You deserve better than boring." "I deserve better than a lot of things." They disappeared into their room, and I closed my door, reviewing the video. Perfect quality, clear audio, both faces clearly visible. 55 pieces of evidence. I spent the next 2 hours in my room, working on my laptop and occasionally checking the hallway. At 4:30 they emerged again, looking satisfied and slightly disheveled. "Same time next week?" Rick asked. "I'll check my calendar," Tessa replied coyly. "Your calendar. Right. Like you don't have it memorized." They kissed goodbye in the hallway, directly in front of one of those motion-activated cameras Mr. Lee had mentioned. After they left, I packed up my things and headed downstairs. Mr. Lee was still at the front desk, and I made sure to chat with him again on my way out. "How was your stay?" he asked. "Very productive. I got everything I needed." I paused, as if remembering something. "You know, I think I saw one of my coworkers here today. Rick Carroway, tall guy, drives a silver BMW." Mr. Lee's face lit up with recognition. "Oh yes, Mr. Carroway. He's one of our regulars. Very nice gentleman. He was here today with his wife. Lovely woman, red hair." "That's interesting," I said carefully. "I don't think that was his wife." Mr. Lee's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "Oh, Well, I'm sure it's none of my business. Of course not. I was probably mistaken. But we both knew I wasn't mistaken, and now Mr. Lee would remember this conversation if anyone ever asked about it. I drove back to the office and used my administrative access to log into Rick's company email. It was almost too easy. The man used the same password for everything, and that password was Slick123. Not exactly Fort Knox level security. His inbox was a goldmine of unprofessional behavior. Personal emails sent during business hours, restaurant reservations made on company time, and most damning of all, a series of messages with Tessa discussing their hotel meetups. One email, sent just 3 days ago. Can't wait for our anniversary celebration on Friday. I've got champagne and strawberries charged to the company card. Greg's working late again, so we have all afternoon. You're amazing, and you deserve so much better than what you have at home. The company card. Rick was charging his affair to his expense account. I forwarded the email to my personal account, then started digging deeper into Rick's expense reports. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, jewelry purchases, even a weekend trip to Chicago that coincided with one of Tessa's mysterious girls' weekends. Everything charged to Midwest Marketing Solutions. Everything documented, time-stamped, and completely against company policy. I compiled everything into a comprehensive report, complete with receipts, photos, video evidence, and a detailed timeline of Rick's misuse of company resources. Then I created a presentation file titled Professional Conduct Review, Rick Carroway. The presentation was a masterpiece of corporate bureaucracy. 37 slides of evidence, each one more damning than the last, building to an inevitable conclusion that Rick had violated virtually every clause in the employee handbook. I saved the presentation to a secure folder and sent an anonymous email to Janet Morrison, our head of HR. Subject: Professional Conduct Review Needed, Kiss Cam Fiasco. Janet, attached you'll find documentation of serious policy violations by Rick Carroway, including misuse of company resources, inappropriate workplace conduct, and potential conflicts of interest. I believe this matter requires immediate attention and should be addressed at the next all-hands meeting. The evidence speaks for itself. A concerned employee. I scheduled the email to send at 8:09 a.m. Monday morning, then leaned back in my chair and smiled. Janet Morrison was a lot of things: ambitious, thorough, politically savvy, but she was not someone who tolerated scandal in her department, especially not scandal that could reflect poorly on her management. Rick had picked the wrong company to cheat with, and Tessa had picked the wrong husband to humiliate. Monday's all-hands meeting was going to be very educational, for everyone involved. Monday morning arrived with the subtle electricity that precedes a thunderstorm. I got to the office early, grabbing coffee and a front-row seat to watch Janet Morrison's face as she read her email. At 8:47 a.m., I heard her office door slam. At 8:52 a.m., she called Rick's extension and asked him to come see her immediately. At 9:15 a.m., she called CEO Michael Harmon and requested an emergency all-hands meeting for 10:30 a.m. Mandatory attendance, her email announcement read. No exceptions. I spent the next hour making sure our conference room's audio-visual system was working perfectly. As the IT guy, it was my job to ensure all presentations ran smoothly. I took that responsibility very seriously. The conference room filled up with the usual suspects: sales team, marketing department, HR staff, and various administrative personnel. Rick looked confident, even cocky, as he took his seat near the front. Tessa had somehow managed to get herself invited, probably as a consultant for some made-up HR initiative. They sat 3 seats apart, not making eye contact, playing their roles perfectly. Janet Morrison entered at exactly 10:30, carrying a laptop and wearing the expression of someone who'd discovered a deceased rodent in her desk drawer. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," she began, connecting her laptop to the projector. "We're here to discuss a matter of professional conduct that has come to the company's attention." The room grew quiet. Professional conduct meetings were never good news for someone. Over the weekend, I received documentation of serious policy violations by a member of our sales team. The evidence is extensive and frankly shocking. The projector screen lit up with the title slide, Professional Conduct Review, Rick Carroway. Rick's confident expression faltered. The allegations include misuse of company resources, inappropriate workplace conduct, and behavior that reflects poorly on our organization's reputation. Janet clicked to the next slide. A photo of Rick and Tessa kissing in the hotel hallway, time-stamped and crystal clear. Someone in the back row gasped. This photograph was taken last Friday afternoon at the Marriott downtown, during business hours, while Mr. Carroway was supposed to be attending a client meeting. Another click. Rick's expense report for that day, showing charges for champagne, strawberries, and a hotel room. These expenses were charged to the company credit card and submitted as legitimate business costs. Click. The email exchange between Rick and Tessa, discussing their anniversary celebration. These communications were sent using company email systems and company time. The room was silent now. You could hear the air conditioning humming, someone's stomach growling, and the sound of Rick's career imploding. Janet continued clicking through the slides. Restaurant receipts, hotel charges, jewelry purchases, the Chicago weekend trip, all charged to the company and all connected to Rick's affair with Tessa. The total misappropriation of company funds amounts to $8,247 over the past 4 months. Click. The kiss cam footage, frozen at the moment Tessa kissed Rick while pointing at me. This incident occurred at a public venue and was broadcast on live television, creating potential embarrassment for our company and its employees. I could feel everyone's eyes turning toward me, but I kept my expression neutral. Professional. Like a man who definitely hadn't orchestrated this entire presentation. Janet reached the final slide. Recommendation: immediate termination for cause. CEO Michael Harmon, who had been silent throughout the presentation, finally spoke. Mr. Carroway, do you have anything to say in response to these allegations? Rick stood up slowly, his face red and sweaty. This is a setup. Someone's been spying on me, violating my privacy. Your privacy? Janet's voice could have cut glass. You used company resources to conduct a personal affair. You submitted fraudulent expense reports. You engaged in inappropriate conduct with a married woman during business hours. It's not what it looks like, Rick stammered. Really? Because it looks like you've been stealing from the company to pay for your affair. Tessa finally spoke up, her voice small and shaky. It was just, we didn't mean for it to happen. You didn't mean to charge $8,000 in personal expenses to the company? Harmon asked. We didn't mean to hurt anyone, Tessa clarified, shooting a desperate look in my direction. The irony was delicious. She was looking to me for support, for forgiveness, for some sign that I would help her out of this mess. I gave her nothing. Mr. Carroway, Harmon continued, you're terminated immediately. Security will escort you out of the building. We'll be pursuing legal action to recover the misappropriated funds. You can't do this, Rick protested. I've been with this company for 6 years. And you've been stealing from us for 4 months. Security. 2 guards appeared at the conference room door. Rick looked around the room desperately, as if someone might come to his rescue. No one did. As the security guards escorted Rick toward the door, he stopped and turned back to face me. This was you, wasn't it, Jennings? You set this whole thing up. I met his eyes calmly. I work in IT, Rick. I just maintain the systems. You son of a... That's enough, Harmon interrupted. Get him out of here. After Rick was gone, Janet turned to Tessa. Mrs. Jennings, while you're not a company employee, your involvement in this matter raises serious concerns. We'll be reviewing whether to pursue legal action against you as well. Tessa looked like she might faint. The meeting dispersed slowly, with clusters of employees whispering and checking their phones. Within minutes, the story would be spreading through social media, office gossip networks, and probably the local news. I packed up the audio-visual equipment methodically, professionally. My phone was buzzing with text messages. "Dude, that was insane!" "Marty, you're a legend." Unknown number. "Holy shit, did you plan that whole thing?" "Gina, she had it coming." Another unknown number. I ignored them all and headed for the parking lot. That's where Rick was waiting for me. Rick was leaning against my car when I got to the parking lot, still wearing his visitor's badge from the security escort. His silver BMW was parked 2 spaces away, and I could see his cardboard box of personal belongings sitting on the hood. "We need to talk," he said as I approached. "I don't think we do. You destroyed my career. You humiliated me in front of the entire company." I unlocked my car door, keeping my movements calm and deliberate. "I think you handled the humiliation part all by yourself, Rick. I just provided the documentation. You spied on us. You violated our privacy. I maintained IT security protocols. Everything I found was either on company systems or in public spaces." I opened the car door. "If you wanted privacy, you probably shouldn't have used the company credit card." Rick stepped closer, and I could smell the desperation on him like cheap cologne. "You think this is over? You think you won?" "I think you're unemployed and facing potential criminal charges for embezzlement." I got into my car. "So yeah, I'd say I won." Rick slammed his hand on my roof as I started the engine. "This isn't finished, Jennings." I rolled down the window. "Actually, Rick, it is. You're done. Tessa's done. And I'm just getting started." I drove away, leaving him standing in the parking lot like a scarecrow in a 3-piece suit. But Rick was wrong about one thing. This wasn't finished, not by a long shot. That evening, I called my friend Marty, who managed O'Malley's pub downtown and had the kind of connections that came in handy when you needed to spread information quickly. "Jesus, Greg," Marty said when I walked into the bar. "The whole city's talking about what happened today. Someone posted the meeting video online." "Someone posted it?" "Yeah, it's all over social media. Sure's Kiss Cam Revenge is trending on Twitter." I hadn't posted anything, which meant someone else in that conference room had been recording, probably multiple people. "Buy you a beer?" Marty offered. "Make it a double." We found a quiet booth in the back, and I filled Marty in on the details he hadn't already heard through the gossip network. "So what's next?" he asked. "Next, I make sure everyone knows exactly who they were dealing with." I pulled out my phone and showed Marty a contact card for Dirty Dave Davidson, who ran the city's most popular gossip blog. Dave specialized in local scandals, political corruption, and social media drama. Exactly the kind of person who would appreciate a story like this. "You're going nuclear," Marty observed. "They went nuclear first. I'm just returning fire." I sent Dave a message with the basic details and a link to the conference room video. Within an hour, his blog post was live. Local sales director uses company credit card to fund affair, gets exposed at all hands meeting. The post included screenshots from the presentation, quotes from anonymous company insiders, and a detailed breakdown of Rick's expense account fraud. Dave had even tracked down the Kiss Cam footage and embedded it in the article. By midnight, the story had been shared over 3,000 times. Tuesday morning brought a new development. Tessa's sister Becca called me. "Greg, it's Becca. I just saw the news about Tessa and that man from your work." Becca lived in the same apartment complex as Tessa, and they'd had a complicated relationship ever since Tessa had borrowed $5,000 from Becca 2 years ago and never paid it back. "It's been a difficult few days," I said carefully. "I'll bet. Listen, I don't know if this matters, but Tessa's been telling everyone in the building that you're abusive. She's been playing the victim, saying you're controlling and jealous." My grip tightened on the phone. "She's been saying what?" "Yeah, she's got half the neighbors thinking you're some kind of monster. Mrs. Patterson from 3B actually asked me if Tessa was safe living with you." "That's interesting timing. Right? Like she was setting up some kind of story in case this all came out." Becca paused. "Look, I know my sister, and I know when she's manipulating people. She's been planning this for weeks. After I hung up with Becca, I sat in my kitchen and thought about what she'd told me. Tessa hadn't just been having an affair. She'd been building a narrative to protect herself when it all fell apart. She'd been telling our neighbors that I was abusive, probably planning to claim that my discovery of the affair was really just jealous stalking by a controlling husband. It was actually a smart strategy. If I hadn't gotten ahead of the story, if I hadn't documented everything so thoroughly, she might have been able to flip the script and make me the villain. But she'd underestimated me. Again. I spent Tuesday afternoon implementing phase 2 of my plan. I printed out copies of all the evidence, hotel receipts, email exchanges, expense reports, photos, and put together information packets for key people in our social circle. Mel, Tessa's best friend, got a packet delivered to her office. Janet Morrison got an updated file with additional evidence I'd been saving. Cheryl, Rick's wife, got the most comprehensive package of all, delivered by courier to her workplace. And Mrs. Patterson from 3B got a very enlightening conversation about the difference between an abusive husband and a husband who'd been systematically lied to and cheated on. By Wednesday, the narrative had shifted. Instead of being the controlling husband who'd spied on his innocent wife, I was the wronged party who'd uncovered a systematic deception. Tessa's support network evaporated overnight. Thursday morning, I got a call from Cheryl Carroway. "Mr. Jennings? This is Cheryl, Rick's wife. Ex-wife, actually. I filed for divorce yesterday." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be. I should have done it years ago." She paused. "I wanted to thank you for putting together that evidence file. My lawyer says it's going to make the divorce proceedings much simpler." "I'm glad it helped." "There's something else. Rick's been staying at a motel since Monday, and he's been drinking heavily. He's been calling me, leaving voicemails about how he's going to get even with you." "Get even how?" "I don't know, but he's not thinking clearly. He blames you for everything. Losing his job, losing me, the public humiliation. In his mind, none of this is his fault." After Cheryl hung up, I forwarded her warning to my personal email and made sure my home security system was armed. Rick was becoming unpredictable, and unpredictable people do stupid things. I was counting on it. Friday night, I was in my apartment organizing the last of Tessa's belongings into boxes when I heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Heavy, unsteady footsteps that stopped right outside my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Rick Carroway swaying slightly, holding what looked like a crowbar. Perfect. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to several contacts. "Rick's here, about to get interesting. Come to my apartment if you want to see the finale." Then I opened the door. "Rick, you look terrible." He was drunk, unshaven, and wearing the same clothes he'd had on when security escorted him out of the building 4 days ago. The crowbar in his hand was shaking slightly. "You destroyed my life," he slurred. "No, Rick. You destroyed your life. I just documented it." "Same thing." "Not really. You want to come in? Or are we doing this in the hallway?" Rick pushed past me into the apartment, and I left the door open behind him. Within minutes, I could hear other doors opening in the hallway as my neighbors came to investigate the commotion. "You think you're so smart," Rick continued, waving the crowbar around like a conductor's baton. "You think you won. I know I won. You're unemployed, divorced, and apparently homeless. I'd say that's a pretty decisive victory. I'm going to destroy you." "With what? You don't have a job, you don't have money, and after tonight, you're probably going to jail." Rick's face turned red. "You arrogant piece of—" "Careful, Rick. We have an audience." I gestured toward the open doorway, where several neighbors had gathered to watch the show. Mrs. Patterson from 3B was there, along with the college students from 2A and the elderly couple from across the hall. Someone was definitely recording with their phone. "I don't care who's watching," Rick said, raising the crowbar. You should, because when you assault me with that weapon, it's going to be documented from multiple angles. Rick looked confused, like he hadn't thought this through, which, knowing Rick, he probably hadn't. Put the crowbar down, Rick. Walk away. You've already lost everything that matters. Don't add assault charges to your problems. Shut up. Rick swung the crowbar at my coffee table, shattering the glass top. You ruined everything. The crowd in the doorway gasped and stepped back, but nobody left. This was better than cable television. I didn't ruin anything, I said calmly. You cheated on your wife with my wife. You stole from the company. You humiliated me in public. All I did was make sure people knew the truth. The truth? Rick laughed bitterly. You want the truth? Your wife came to me. She said you were boring, that you didn't appreciate her, that she needed a real man. And you believed her? She was right. Look at you, you're pathetic. No wonder she wanted someone better. I smiled. Rick, if I'm so pathetic, how did I manage to destroy your entire life in less than a week? That stopped him cold. Think about it, I continued. I'm just a boring IT guy, right? But I outmaneuvered you at every turn. I gathered evidence you didn't know existed. I turned your own company against you. I exposed your affair to the entire city. I even got your wife to divorce you. Rick's grip on the crowbar tightened. And now you're standing in my apartment, drunk and desperate, about to assault me in front of witnesses who are recording everything on their phones. So tell me, Rick, if I'm the pathetic one, what does that make you? Rick snapped. He lunged at me with the crowbar, but alcohol had slowed his reflexes. I sidestepped easily, and Rick crashed into the wall, putting his shoulder through the drywall. The crowd in the doorway scattered as Rick pulled himself out of the wall and swung wildly at me again. This time, I grabbed a couch cushion and used it to deflect the blow, then shoved Rick backwards. He stumbled, tripped over the coffee table he'd broken, and went down hard, the crowbar skittering across the floor. Stay down, Rick. But Rick wasn't done. He got to his knees and started crawling toward the crowbar, breathing heavily. That's when the police arrived. Someone in the crowd, probably Mrs. Patterson, had called 911. 2 officers pushed through the gathered neighbors and took in the scene. Broken furniture, a drunk man with a weapon, and me standing calmly in the middle of it all. Sir, step away from the weapon, one officer ordered Rick. Rick looked up at the officers, then at me, then at the crowd of neighbors recording everything. For the first time since this whole mess started, he seemed to understand the situation he was in. He set me up, Rick said weakly. This was all a setup. Sir, you're in someone else's apartment with a crowbar, and there's damaged furniture everywhere. That's trespassing and assault with a dangerous weapon. As the officers handcuffed Rick, more people arrived in the hallway. Marty from the bar, Gina from the office, even Becca, Tessa's sister. Word was spreading through social media that the final confrontation was happening, and people wanted to see how it ended. Greg, Tessa's voice cut through the crowd as she pushed her way into the apartment. What happened? Are you okay? She looked genuinely concerned, which might have been touching if I didn't know it was all performance for the audience. I'm fine, I said. Rick decided to pay me a visit. Rick? What were you thinking? Tessa asked, but Rick was already being led away by the police. Ma'am, are you the wife? One of the officers asked Tessa. Yes, I'm his wife. Ex-wife, I corrected. The divorce papers were filed yesterday. Tessa's face went pale. Divorce papers? I pulled out my phone and showed her the email from my lawyer. I filed on Monday, right after your little performance at the office. Irreconcilable differences, with supporting evidence of adultery. Greg, we need to talk about this. No, we don't. I gestured to the crowd still gathered in my doorway and hallway. We're done talking. We're done pretending. We're done. But I can explain. Explain what? That you've been cheating on me for months? That you charged your affair to Rick's company credit card? That you told the neighbors I was abusive to set up your victim narrative? the crowd murmured at this last revelation. Tessa looked around desperately, realizing that her reputation was crumbling in real time. That's not... I never said you were abusive. Mrs. Patterson, I called out to my neighbor, would you like to tell everyone what Tessa told you about me last week? Mrs. Patterson stepped forward, clearly enjoying her moment in the spotlight. She said you were controlling and jealous, and that she was afraid of how you might react if you found out about her friendship with Rick. My friendship with Rick was innocent, Tessa protested. Someone in the crowd laughed. Innocent? Gina spoke up. I saw the hotel receipts, $8,000 worth of innocent. The kiss cam footage is still online, someone else added. Doesn't look very innocent. Tessa looked around the room, searching for a friendly face, someone who might support her story. She found none. You did this, she said, turning back to me. You orchestrated all of this. You manipulated everyone. I documented everything, I replied. There's a difference. You ruined my life. No, Tessa. You ruined your own life. I just made sure everyone knew about it. The police finished their work and started clearing the crowd. Tessa lingered, desperately trying one last time to salvage something from the wreckage of what had once been our life. Greg, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, start over. We can fix this. I looked at her for a long, quiet moment, the weight of everything I'd endured pressing down on me. I thought about the woman I had married, the woman I thought I knew, how she'd seemed so different before everything came crashing down. But now, standing in front of me, was someone I didn't recognize. Tessa, I said, my voice steady but cold. You kissed another man on live television and pointed at me like I was some kind of punchline. You cheated on me for months, lied to our friends and neighbors. You tried to paint me as an abuser just to protect yourself. Tessa took a step closer, a look of desperation in her eyes. I made mistakes. You didn't just make mistakes. You made choices, I interrupted, each word landing harder than the last. And now you get to live with the consequences. I turned and walked to the door, opening it wide to let her know the conversation was over. Goodbye, Tessa. She hesitated, standing still for a moment as if expecting something more from me, an apology, an explanation, a softening of my resolve. But there was nothing left to say. With a final, bitter glance, she walked out of my apartment and out of my life for good. The hallway outside began to clear slowly, neighbors and friends offering their congratulations, condolences, and hollow promises to help clean up the broken furniture. They were all so eager to move on from the drama, eager to forget the ugliness that had unfolded just hours before. When everyone was finally gone, I sank into the couch, looking around the apartment that had once been a home. The place was quieter now, but this silence felt different. It wasn't oppressive or uncomfortable. It was peaceful, final. My phone buzzed with notifications, social media posts, news articles, and messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. The story had gone viral once more, but this time, the narrative had shifted. Instead of being the victim, I was the hero. The tables had turned, and the public's sympathy had shifted in my favor. I silenced my phone and poured myself a drink, letting the cool liquid settle in my hand. The sound of Rick being loaded into the back of a police car drifted up from the street, probably on his way to a drunk tank or facing assault charges. I knew Tessa was out there somewhere, trying to figure out how to rebuild a life without me, without Rick, and without her carefully constructed victim narrative. She had no one left to blame but herself. Tomorrow, the lawyers would start the process of handling the divorce details. The insurance would cover the broken furniture. The gossip blogs would move on to the next scandal, the next juicy story, leaving my name in the past. But tonight, for the first time in months, I was exactly where I wanted to be. Alone, vindicated, and completely satisfied with the revenge I had so carefully planned. I raised my glass to the empty apartment, a small smile tugging at my lips. You wanted a show? I said aloud, as if to no one in particular. Here's the finale. Curtains down. I'm still standing. And for the first time in a long while, I believed it.